I remember seeing Close Encounters. I remember seeing Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Raiders of the Lost Ark definitely more than once at the cinema. And actually, I remember
By then you're 7 and you're getting it.
Well, also, I remember that one specifically was the first time I remember understanding that somebody made the movie. And because the trailer for Raiders made a big deal of like, from director Steven Spielberg, from producer George Lucas.
Right.
And then also, like, oh, Han Solo is in this film, but he's playing a different character. He's not, Harrison Ford is not really Han Solo. He's a guy.
This is Talking Pictures, a movie memories podcast from Turner Classic Movies and HBO Max. I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Today's guest, Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright has now directed 8 feature films, so he's pretty much figured out how movies are made. He broke out in 2004 with the zombie comedy Shaun of the Dead. He wrote it with its star, Simon Pegg. Wright's biggest commercial success came in 2017, Baby Driver, where he put his love of music and punchy editing together with some wild chase sequences. His latest is the remake of the Stephen King novel The Running Man, starring Glenn Powell. It came out last year. The original, from the late 80s, of course, starred Arnold Schwarzenegger and Richard Dawson. Edgar Wright is just a huge movie fan. Silence, classics, horror, comedy, movies with lots of chasing. It's not really a genre. Edgar is a regular at the TCM Classic Film Festival in LA. He is the perfect guest for this podcast. Here now, my conversation with writer-director Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright, thanks for being here.
And thanks for having me.
This is, you're in my home office here.
I love it.
Yeah, it's nice. When we put it together, we had no thought that it was going to host A-list directors, but I'll take it. This is nice. So, these are called ADUs, additional dwelling units. And so we've been calling it in conversation with my wife, like I'm going down to the ADU, or I say I'm going down to my office, but like we can't call it the ADU anymore. So we're looking for a nickname for it.
Oh.
And if you think of anything as the show goes on, you're a creative man, writer and director. Just to hurl it out. I mean, it could be anything.
I got a pitch.
All right, go.
Citizen Cave.
Oh. Wow. I mean, it's weird.
It's not the man cave. It's the Citizen Cave.
That's it's not. I didn't imagine that the first pitch would obviously be the one we're taking, because then I can even say I'm going down to the cave, and people will think man cave, and I'm like, no, it's Citizen Cave. Right, please. That's it.
Please.
I think it's done.
You have that one for free.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. You're a writer also. Clearly. What do you prefer? Or you must think of yourself first as a director now, right? But
yeah, I mean, writing is like, I think it's like, it's only fun when it's going great, which is maybe like 2% of the time.
It's arduous and frustrating.
It's arduous, and I think when I do write, usually I write with people. I've, occasionally, like with Baby Driver, I've written on my own. And I think a lot of that process is what I call like the procrastination, boiling up to the point where you can't do anything else except write at a certain point. So I sort of do a lot of creative procrastination, which is reading, watching, listening, and to the point where you just can't, you have to start doing something.
You mentioned that you wrote Baby Driver on your own. I watched it again last night. I hadn't seen it. It came out 2017, right?
Yeah.
So I haven't seen it in 8.5 or 9 years. And where did I write it down? This is going to be a fun little game. Oh, yeah. So this is a top 10 romantic line for me, said by both characters, right? But when I wrote it after he said it, I want us to head west on 20 in a car we can't afford with a plan we don't have and keep driving and never stop. Lily James says it first, and then he says it later. But, man, that's a beautiful line.
Oh, thank you.
And what do you want, baby?
I want us to head west on 20 in a car we can't afford with a plan we don't have. Keep driving and never stop.
Are you serious?
I am, Deborah.
It's funny you say about creative procrastination and Baby Driver. When I first started writing that draft, it was a very similar thing where I was like, I knew what I wanted to do. And I basically sort of had the tricky thing sometimes if you're a director and I always hesitate when I say writer-director because most of the time you're writing for something for you to direct. And the biggest part of the task is that you have the movie in your head and it's how do you get it on paper? And
It's in your head first, right?
Yeah, it's like you can see it and you can feel it, but it's like actually writing it down to then communicate it to somebody else to give you the money to make it that's the hard bit. And especially writing action as prose is really tough.
So in Baby Driver then, so like the great chase scene, I mean, there's great driving stuff, but to me, the most memorable parts are like the foot race, the chase, right?
Yeah.
The cops chasing him through the mall in Atlanta and back out. And so when he's like jumping escalators and switching from one escalator and back up the other one, and what are you writing? What does the script say?
It had a version of that, but then you kind of change it based on the location that you have. But it always had the thing of him going through like a mall and, running through a mall and getting out to that car park.
But would you write it out? I mean, does it say like races in the mall, runs down an escalator, leaps over one, knowing full well that if you don't get an escalator, you obviously won't do that. You'll leap over something else. I
think it's a sort of like it's just about punchiness of like the sort of the stage directions to make it really easy to read. I think it's something that I, as a director reading other people's scripts, is like overwritten stage directions are sort of like, a really hard, it's a real chore.
You also want to make sure that the people who are reading the screenplay before you've even made the movie are getting the vibe you want. And I imagine endless stage direction takes you out of the excitement. So you're thinking about it in that way too. Like if you're sending it to an actor who you want very badly that he'll say yes and do it, right? You want them to be excited by it, and that a screenplay that slows down with the descriptive action could take them out of their experience of reading the part, right?
Absolutely. And also what's funny about it and weird about it is that I think a lot of the time what you're trying to get across in the stage directions is attitude and tone, but you're also doing a lot of work for something that's actually not going to be on screen. Because then it's like, then you have to draw the storyboards, and then you have to find the locations, then you have to shoot it. So it's funny actually you said about the creative procrastination with that particular film. I was in Los Angeles when I started writing it, and I had that thing where I was in a rented house and I had a nice office, but I don't know if you have a similar thing where it's like, it's very difficult for me at least to get up and start writing. I have to like go somewhere and come back. It's almost like the kind of like the fake trip to the office. And what I would do when I was doing that, and I thought about this because I drove past it the other day, I would drive a few blocks down. I wish it was a cooler place to go to, but it was like a Starbucks. I think it was the Starbucks on like Sunset and La Brea. And I just noticed the other day, I drove past it, that it closed, which is always wild when a Starbucks is closed. It's like, oh, wow.
It turns out there was a number that was too many. Right.
But I used to go there, I used to get the LA Times, I used to read the California section, and I would just write down surnames and names of streets. And if there was any crime things where a car was involved, I just write down things. So you're writing down like surnames, like sort of towns, street names, car makes. And the other thing I remember about that particular Starbucks on La Brea and Sunset, because I was telling my fiance about this the other day, is I realized I was sitting there, I was like looking around, I said, wow, everybody has their laptops and their big cameras attached to them. Everybody's downloading lots of photos. And I was like, oh, this is the Starbucks where the paparazzi come to. So it's all of those guys. There seems to be slightly a dying breed.
Oh, so the paparazzi were in there.
And they were at every table with their laptops, with their big, heavy-duty kind of cameras, with the lenses all plugged in, downloading like hundreds of photos.
So we're glad that Starbucks closed. Right. That's a win.
I think maybe it got shut down by the pest control.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. I love that. So. Thinking about pacing, and I got a lot to ask you, so the movies that I rewatched were Shaun of the Dead and Baby Driver, and you got those quick montages, and they're so effective, and just like the example, like you coming up with somebody grabbing the keys off the table, shutting the front door, starting the car, right? Yeah. That could be one, right? And the whole thing takes, what, a second and a half, 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Probably less than I imagine, right? And that has a way, I wonder if that is a way of tricking, in the wonderful way that movies do, tricking the audience into thinking the pace is quicker than you actually have it because you want to do something different? Or does that happen accidentally?
Well, it's a couple of things. In that one, I guess to answer of how many, usually it's like a rule of three, like 1, 2, 3. And then sometimes the third one is subverting it. In Shaun of the Dead, the whole idea with that, and I like those sequences generally. I love stuff with inserts. And I think people that probably influenced that would be like Sam Raimi, James Cameron, Paul Thomas Anderson to some extent in some of the early films. But the idea with Shaun of the Dead was it was all building up. Usually you see it in action films when people are like loading up guns.
That's right. It's usually precursor to serious violence.
It's called the tooling up montage.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know it had a name. Right.
The tooling up montage. Commando would be a good example.
Right, yeah.
So the idea with Shaun of the Dead is like, well, what if the tooling up montage were all like mundane things?
So great.
Toast, jam,
right.
tea,
That's right.
keys, answer phone, like closing the door.
Right.
But it does build up to the last one in the film is a tooling up montage because then he's got the gun. And then in Hot Fuzz, we sort of took it a bit further as like, well, that's a cop film where you do have guns. But what if you shot all of the boring parts of police work like it was an action montage as well? Yeah. So what if you took the Tony Scott, Michael Bay approach to paperwork?
Right.
Lid, click, pen, the things that you don't see in Bad Boys 2. So the paperwork.
I was struck by in Hot Fuzz, there's a real payoff with the click of the pen. Right. With Simon, looking at the camera. So when you shoot that though, it's a fairly mundane thing to shoot, right? But then there's or is it not? But there's a huge payoff when you see it in the movie.
They are difficult to do, and usually they're always the things that are difficult to justify, or people start asking, do you really need these shots? And on Shaun of the Dead, it was always the thing that would always fall off the schedule. And I'm the kind of person who's quite sort of like OCD in terms of, you could have 40 shots to do in a day, but if I was like, he did 39, it's like, I didn't get that shot of the shoelaces. It will bug me until the end of the shoot. But on Shaun of the Dead, what we ended up doing to do those sequences, I had to sort of prove that they were really important. We ended up on some of our days, it was a low budget film. We had an A and B camera and we would stagger the lunchtime of like B camera. And I would stay with them over lunch and said, okay, we'll shoot these close-ups. And then we edited them together and showed them to, the executive producers. And they were like, oh, okay, now I get it. But usually what happens is at the end of a film, you end up just doing all of the inserts. So on most films, Hot Fuzz and Baby Driver being two great examples, and The Running Man for that matter, is usually the end of the shoot. Is that you're not ending in some kind of like triumph of like, this is the last shot, it's magic hour, the sun is going down, we're in the desert, there's this incredible shot. It's usually you're doing shots of button, like brake, handbrake, steering wheel, like it's always like the buttons. And usually the actors have long gone. But there is actually, on Hot Fuzz, there's a whole sequence where Simon is tooling up when he finally gets into they've got that cache of weapons and he's doing all the shots. And I said to Simon, you should come in and do it. And he said, will you even see my face? And I said, no. And he said, do you really need me to do it? And I said, the shots are going to look so cool, you will wish it was you. And he goes, okay.
Good enough. Yeah.
And also actors, I got to say, actors can act with their hands. Yeah. Doing that stuff is not easy.
Yeah.
And, you get sometimes extras in that kind of like, it is about you have to have some sense of movement. I always think that movement is so important. And I always started to think doing movies where the difference between an actor and a movie star.
I wanted to ask you about that very thing because that fascinated me.
Well, I felt like an actor acts and can disappear. And a movie star knows where the camera is and knows where their light is.
And that's not it's not an insult in any way, right?
Like Daniel Day-Lewis is an amazing actor, and he sort of disappears, and you got to capture that on camera. He's like Daniel Day-Lewis is gone and you're standing there with the character and like you just got to capture that on film. Like, but Marlene Dietrich knows where the camera is and knows where the light is.
Knows where exactly way to tilt her head.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting thing when you work with people who are like dancers or have any kind of dance background. That's a sort of, and obviously there's a lot of actors that I've had in my films that have that, you know, Anya Taylor-Joy, Ansel Elgort, like people who've got that kind of like movement background. And you can tell there's a different sort of quality to it. But that's, again, I'm not making the distinction in terms of a movie star is better than an actor. I just started to notice that in terms of like, oh, you know, movie stars know where the camera is and how to act opposite the camera, not just the other actor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And so as a director, then you know that your challenges, your duties, what you need to do is slightly different depending on what kind of actor that is.
Absolutely.
Right.
A lot of your work as a director is strategizing between different people's performance styles, especially if you're doing an ensemble film. Like when we were doing The World's End, there's so many scenes in that where they're around like a table. Usually like filmmakers hate dinner party scenes.
Right,
because they're at dinner at 8 right there.
Right.
Like,
super hard to shoot. Right?
Super hard to shoot because you have to think of all the eye lines.
Yeah.
And if you got like a table, like 8 people at a dinner table, that's most people's like nightmare to shoot something like that. We had a lot of scenes with 5 people around a table. And you used to kind of figure out, myself and Bill Pope, the cinematographer, would figure out the order in which we should do the actors based on how quickly, what their particular style was. And like, it was like, Paddy Considine's amazing, but he's like lightning in a bottle and you're gonna get the first 3 takes. And then Nick Frost next. Eddie Marzan is like right in the middle. Martin Freeman and like Simon Pegg are like the Energizer bunnies who can just go and go and go. So it's like, that's the order. And then by the 3rd day you do that, Simon Pegg goes, can I go first tomorrow? Like he starts to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, he's clued in, and then, but you're putting him last because you know that it doesn't matter how long you have him.
He's the co-writer,
right?
Like he knows the lines more than anybody because he co-wrote the script with me.
And he always comes out like a cannon's been fired, right? The energy
he's like
is always
so really
there.
consistent. And that's not to say like the other things are wrong. It's like some people just have an energy where it's like you have to capture that. You have to capture that in the first 3 takes because then that's their energy and they're fired up to go and that's it, you know?
We still have to get some of your history in here.
No, totally.
So we'll do that. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back with Edgar Wright on Talking Pictures. So when did you start falling in love with movies?
I think at a very young age, because my parents would take me and my brother to the cinema. I mean, I remember just knowing about films through my parents. Neither of them are in the business. They're both like artists and were also art teachers at school.
But they were movie fans.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the sense of that they would take me and my brother to the cinema quite a lot. And I think we never really went out as a family other than that. Like I never went on, very rarely did we go on vacation, maybe when I was very young. And they were always like working and pulling down 2 jobs. So
struggling to make
so the cinema was like a sort of, at the time, like cheap, fun activity. And my mum hates me telling this story. But my dad, because my mum and dad used to do craft fairs, then my dad would like dump me and my brother at the cinema and then sort of go off and shop and do stuff and just leave us there, which obviously we thought was incredible.
Why doesn't your mom like that story? Because it seems irresponsible?
Yes. No. She's actually furious every time I tell this story. Because I think, you know what? She didn't know that was happening until I started telling the story, saying she assumed. So I think Is
your dad still alive?
No, they're both still alive, yeah. It's the later revelation that my dad wasn't with us at the cinema is the thing that...
Did she yell at him?
Well, sorry?
Did she yell at him 30 years later?
I don't think she knew that this was happening until I told the story.
Did she yell at him, did she yell at him 25 years after he last dropped you off? Or?
I mean, she definitely expressed her kind of like sort of anger at me telling that. There's a few stories that I think are really cool, and then whenever I tell the story, she goes, "This makes us look like such irresponsible parents." But my dad what he would do is he would take me and my brother to the cinema, and I remember this happening more than once. There was a town nearby, Swanage, hometown, had a cinema, which is still there, amazingly. And then the nearest town, Bournemouth, which is another seaside resort, it used to have this street, Westover Road, that had 3 cinemas on it. So I remember in that period of like first going to the movies, the first movie I ever saw was Star Wars, like when I was age 3. And then I can sort of
No, you ever any memory of that?
I do.
Yeah.
Because I knew of it because I'd probably seen some commercials or clips on TV. But what I remember about it was that they didn't tell us where we were going. We were driving somewhere. And it didn't get released in the UK until Christmas 1977. So I think we must have seen it in early 78. But I remember being in a queue, a line for the American listeners, in the dark and not knowing why there were so many people back in the days before reserved seating where people lined up for movies, obviously. We were in a long line for something. And as the line was we're probably in the line for an hour. And it's cold and it's exciting because we're going somewhere. I don't know whether it's a firework display.
But also, you know that everybody is around you is excited, right? Yeah. You feel the excitement even at a young age.
I remember as we got closer to the cinema, which is a place called the Galaxy on Hinton Road, which is, I think, was later a church. It's now turned back into a theatre again, as I understand. I remember seeing the quad poster outside of like, oh, and then you recognize me and my brother sort of Star Wars, like, and then the thing about I do remember seeing the film because I remember the cinema had stars on the ceiling, like fluorescent stars. And so when the film started and you have the Rebel transporter and the Star Destroyer going over, there was also stars on the ceiling as well.
Because it's the Galaxy.
So I just sort of had this feeling of I didn't know where the building ended and the film began. Because the whole thing had stars on the ceiling. So I do remember that screening. And then also the thing, obviously in that day and age where you didn't have the internet, you would then live with your memory of the film for maybe like a year, 2 years, until they re-released it and you saw it again.
Right, you're not going to see it on TV. There's nowhere to see it. Right.
Yeah, it's like you. So then, in terms of your imagination and your recall of the film is really, you could draw it. You go home and draw the characters.
Did you?
Yeah, and you start kind of especially if you have the action figures, start kind of doing like alternative stories and stuff. But I remember around that time, most of the family films or big films coming out, we would see. I remember seeing Close Encounters. I remember seeing Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I remember seeing Watership Down, The Lord of the Rings, Ralph Bakshi one, Popeye, Raiders of the Lost Ark, definitely more than once at the cinema. And actually, I remember
By then you're 7 and you're getting it.
Well, also, I remember that one specifically was the first time I remember understanding that somebody made the movie. And because the trailer for Raiders made a big deal of like, from director Steven Spielberg, from producer George Lucas. Right. And then also, Harrison Ford, Han Solo is in this film, but he's playing a different character. Harrison Ford is not really Han Solo. He's a guy. Now he's playing Indiana Jones.
Right. That's an interesting, that's an interesting revelation to be able to, and you can pinpoint when that happened. Let me go back to your parents for a sec. Did they, they've seen all your movies?
Yeah, of course.
That's not something that everybody gets. That's pretty exciting.
No, that's nice.
Yeah, that's a nice thing. Do they love them?
Yeah, no, they're very proud. And yeah, absolutely. I think, my parents are, my dad certainly is very elderly and
what are their names, by the way?
Chris and Leslie. My mum is in Hot
I
Fuzz,
literally
actually.
don't know which one is which.
Okay, yes. I know they're both those names.
Yeah,
So
right. Go
Chris is
either
my
way.
dad, Leslie is my mum.
Yeah, are you sure?
She's in Hot Fuzz. She's one of the Village of the Year officials that turns up at the end, shocked and appalled. So my mum just does this deadpan face. But yeah, they're very proud and they go and see the films. I mean, actually, when my dad is, not in great health now, and actually the last time he came abroad was, and the first time they'd ever been in America, in fact, they came to the Baby Driver Los Angeles premiere, which actually was the last time my dad was outside the UK. So it was great that they got to see that, So yeah, it's and my mum came to the Running Man premiere in London and had a whale of a time. So yeah, they've both been really incredibly, and also I got to say this, because having artists as parents, I think the biggest thing they did for me and my brother was just support our artistic endeavors, especially when we didn't have any connections within the industry. And even though as teenagers, it's like we were sort of movie mad and wanted to be in it, but didn't know how. And it wasn't something that my mum and dad ever said, like, you can't do this.
They can't call some friend.
Yes.
You know.
But what I mean is they also never said, you're crazy, you should think about, like, a proper job. They never did that.
I'm sure you've told the story a lot, but it's fun. Your student film that won you a video camera.
Yeah.
Which I watched.
Yeah, that is on the internet.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I wouldn't even know how to describe it. What's it called?
It's called I Want to Get Into the Movies.
Right, I Want to Get Into the Movies,
Yeah.
which is it's a great title.
Prophetic.
You're right. You're good at titles. I mean, for starting with Citizen Cave, right? Citizen Cave took you 1 second. So how old were you when you made I Want to Get Into the Movies?
I think I was 16. It was there was a competition on TV. Comic Relief, the charity, would do a thing every year on TV, and there was a competition on a Saturday morning kids show called Going Live to make a film about one of the sort of charitable causes. And I'd seen this on the film program. It would have been Film 91 at the time. It had this report on the lack of wheelchair access in British cinemas. So that's what the film was about, disabled access to cinemas. And the thing that my mum and dad had done for me and my brother is bought us a Super 8 camera. We had a secondhand Super 8 camera. There was like a joint birthday and Christmas present for me and my brother.
For both of you.
Covering
Four gifts.
Four
Right.
gifts in one.
Yeah, right.
A secondhand Braun Nizo.
That's economical parenting. Yeah.
So I'd made this thing like at night. I stayed up I stayed up into the wee hours. I remember it was actually I had the TV on. It was the night that Gulf War broke out. I remember because that was on the TV all night.
91, yeah.
And I will admit that part of it was because I was sort of faintly aware of the competition, and this is a true part of the story, and I'm sure this is a part of lots of people's origins. It was because a girl that I
was going to
had
say
a crush on
the
at
word
school.
the word girl was going to come up here. Yeah.
She, by the way, I never was in a relationship with this girl. I've mentioned her name so many times in interviews, so I can do it again because she always likes it when I name check her. Fiona Lennon. But I did have a crush on her, and she said, "Hey, you should do that competition that's on TV."
Well, say no more. right, yeah.
The better part of the story is then I won the competition and we got married, but no, it never happened.
Yeah. So you win the contest, right? And then you're on TV, getting interviewed about it, right?
Yeah.
And that you're very encouraged not so much to be a filmmaker, but to be an animator.
Yes.
Like that host really wants you to be an animator. So is it that early that the seed is planted that you'd like to make movies, or does it just still seem like a thing you did as a 16-year-old trying to impress a girl?
No, I'd already at that point, I'd sort of made my mind up, not that I had any idea how, that I wanted to direct films. And the real flashpoint for me, even though I was, a huge movie fan, these are in the days where my hometown is in Somerset, Wells in Somerset, not Wales. Movie magazines that would be in the news agents, like you wouldn't get Sight and Sound in there. You'd have to subscribe to that. Empire sort of came out. You'd have a thing called Film Review. In my public library, very few film books, no internet. So your knowledge of the movies is just what you can kind of pick up by osmosis in a way.
Right.
And
Yeah,
maybe the occasional film book or like a film guide, like our version of the Leonard Maltin's guide in the UK was Halliwell's. And so you'd read through that and pour through things, or maybe I'd, order a book about horror films. But your information about who made them would be a lot less than what it is now. Or obviously there were tons of film books out there, but they were not in my library. So and it's that thing where obviously Hollywood is 1,000 miles away, and I don't really know how Steven Spielberg then got to be a director. I wrongly assumed that a stork dropped him off at the Universal gate, But then the thing that kind of changed everything was
his dad, I think, but still, yeah. It was.
There was this series on Channel 4, like the host Jonathan Ross did, called The Incredibly Strange Film Show, which was started in 1988, so I would have been 14. And it was hour-long profiles on maverick filmmakers. Russ Meyer, John Waters, George Romero, Sam Raimi. this was mind-blowing to see on network TV, terrestrial TV.
How old were you at this
14
point?
to see like an
Right.
hour on John Waters or Russ Meyer on TV, and like I hadn't necessarily seen all of these films, but the one that really like was the light bulb moment was the Sam Raimi one, because it was actually Sam Raimi being interviewed between Evil Dead 2 and Darkman, and seeing in that documentary his Super 8 films that he made at school, and at that moment I'm like, that's it, that's what I'm doing.
So you're 18, you're 14, so it's like 1988,
Yeah.
right? And he's just made Evil Dead 2.
Which I hadn't seen at that point because I was too young to see it.
Had you seen Evil Dead?
No, I was like, my parents didn't have a VCR. And also, Evil Dead was infamously banned.
Not having a VCR is way worse than leaving you alone in a movie theater. That's the shameful parenting. It's not having a VCR.
Also, Evil Dead was banned on video in the UK as part of the Video Nasty scandal. So I didn't see them until later.
Wow, that's but Raimi was like, you know, you're 14. He's what? If he was 19 at that point when he made, so that's you know,
Probably in his
he's
late
like
20s.
yeah, or
mid to
mid
late
20s.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's 12 years older than you are. You know,
But the key thing was not just seeing clips of Evil Dead 1 and 2 and Crime Wave. The thing was seeing these Super 8 shorts done with his school friends. Yeah. And it's the first time that had really been, not just in terms of maybe you'd seen amateur films on TV. It's like, oh, here's a director that's made stuff and this is how he started. And I have a Super 8 camera and I've got friends at school.
and
Let's
not to
just do that.
Not to make you sound arrogant, but you see his Super 8 films, and you don't think, oh, I'll never do that. You think, oh, I could maybe do that.
Yeah,
That's
because
awesome.
it's like it's clearly like him and his friends goofing around doing
Right.
Three Stooges stuff.
And then this is a guy, and then at 19, he's making Evil Dead. And
So that was really the thing, was like kind of like so I did, without really still knowing exactly how. And then in my like late teens, and I went to art college, actually went back to the town where I used to go to the cinema, Bournemouth. By that point, there were more like stories like this very much out there. Robert Rodriguez and El Mariachi,
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino and Reservoir Dogs, Peter Jackson and Bad Taste. Like Bad Taste, Peter Jackson's first film, is like, you know, a semi-amateur film that's in cinemas and was made over weekends with his friends. And it's like, okay, so there's a path into this, and I'm starting to understand what it is.
and it doesn't feel impossible.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still obviously
Yeah, I got it. It's
a long shot, but it's like, and also all of those people are not in Hollywood, you know?
right. That's right.
Robert's in Texas, Peter's in Wellington,
None of them are. No.
Sam Raimi's in Michigan, you know?
Right, right. None of them are right. So it feels attainable. You got to work and you got to
Yeah.
get luck. But you're thinking, I want to pursue this. And of course, if you pursue it and don't make it as you could still end up doing something else in it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
also, the George Romero story is he's like made a start in kind of like industrial movies and
he's
corporate
cutting
films,
in,
you know?
commercials and making corporate videos.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So, of the directors you mentioned, how many of them have you lived in their guest house? Did you live in Peter Jackson's guest house? Did you live in Sam Raimi?
I have stayed in Peter Jackson's guest house, actually. I'm very lucky, actually. Something that I really love about Los Angeles, I'm very lucky to have met most of my sort of heroes.
And lived with them.
and or become friends with them, you know. Like,
no, it's a...
you know, and that's fantastic. And I have stayed in Peter Jackson's guest house
For long? For just like a few days, or?
I went down there for a week, I remember, because after I met him, when I went to show Shaun of the Dead in New Zealand, and then got on with Fran and Philippa and Peter really well, and then just went back when they were making King Kong to just hang out for a week and just watch. Well, why wouldn't you if you had that invite?
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to go and watch King Kong being made and see how the...
Like, you don't say, I have a dentist appointment. That
No,
week.
it's like,
Right,
I'll fly to New Zealand and watch you making King Kong. I want to see what's going on.
But you lived at Tarantino's guest house, right?
I did. That was in like 2007 into 2008.
So you're living there as a very successful filmmaker
Well, I mean, I had never lived
in LA.
in LA before, and I was just coming off the Hot Fuzz press tour. I didn't know exactly what was next. I'd actually just been through like a breakup as well, so I wasn't in any kind of huge rush to get back to London.
I get it.
And I remember thinking, well, maybe I'll stay. I remember actually being with Quentin and having like a drink and dinner with him and vocalizing this, of saying, I was thinking maybe I'll stay in LA for a bit and just right here. I don't really want to go back to London right now. And he said, well, where are you going to stay? And I said, I don't know, a hotel, get an apartment. I had like no idea. I'd never lived anywhere else. And he said, you should stay in the guest house. So that then turned into, I probably was there for about 10 months. And
he probably meant like a week.
I always say to this, he denies it. I always say that I outstayed my welcome.
No, I mean, look, man, if I had a guest house that where like people who I liked a lot could stay, I would love it. I would love it. I'm sure he did love it.
It was also what was great. What was funny is that he's like a real night owl. So there would be sometimes that like an entire week would go by where I was, I had to be at a meeting at a studio at like 9 a.m. And like we would sort of miss each other for like sometimes entire weeks.
Right, I buy that. Yeah.
But then it would be the great thing, like as you might imagine, like with us, like you get a text and he say like, "Hey, what are you doing tonight? I was gonna like just show a marathon of spaghetti western trailers of 35mm." I'm like,
yeah,
I'm there.
I'm there.
I'm already here.
Yeah, I'm already here. I'll walk over.
I'll walk over.
All right, one more break, and then we're going to do the Super 8 with Edgar and ask him about his mom. Many things about his mom. Stay with us. You ready for the Super 8?
Yeah.
All right, we'll start. What's your most memorable movie watching experience?
I have two, and one of them is TCM related.
Oh, I love it.
So I'll do the non-TCM one first. This is just something where it's not necessarily that this is the greatest film of all time, although I am a huge Jackie Chan fan. But I remember being in London in the sort of mid-90s, and there was a preview of Rumble in the Bronx. And I think at that time, Jackie Chan films weren't widely seen on the big screen outside. He's huge internationally, but in the UK, at least, I'd never seen one at the cinema, but he'd been like a huge cult figure. And so it was my first one I ever saw at the cinema. And there's a scene in the first 5 minutes of that, and it's completely packed in the Prince Charles when they used to have a balcony. And in the first 5 minutes of that, there's a scene where he comes to kind of New York, Vancouver.
Sure, yeah.
There's that training tree, like the sort of the wooden sort of training tree.
Yeah.
Where you kind of do all of the stuff. And he started doing it. And the audience just went absolutely crazy. There's no fight scene happened yet. But I remember that people were stamping on the balcony. And the whole cinema, it was the anticipation of action and Jackie Chan doing his thing that the place erupted. And the film was only 5 minutes in. And so, like I said, it wasn't like it's not even my favorite Jackie Chan movie, but it was such an experience watching it with a crowd who I presume, like me, not many of them were fans, but not many of them had seen one of them on the big screen.
It's significant. It's little things like that, little moment. You can't, that's a great moment to be at. As I've spoken on this podcast a lot, seeing the opening weekend at Jurassic Park and the electricity in that theater is,
and you never forget it. You'll never forget the first time you saw something. And they might be films that aren't necessarily like your favorites of all time. I went to the UK premiere of Something About Mary, and the audience was just like, it was like a riot happening.
Right, yeah.
Or seeing Silence of the Lambs opening weekend. And like you said, electricity. It's not like it's a noisy crowd. It's like everybody is pinned back into their seats.
Right, you can feel the silence. You can hear the silence.
You can feel that everybody is very tense, which is amazing.
What's the second one?
My TCM one is, I was at that screening, which I'm sure I think you were on stage, in fact, was the 50th anniversary of In the Heat of the Night, which must have been like 2018.
2017, yeah.
Oh, really?
Well,
okay.
It's at 67. So,
yeah, okay. So, so I was at that event, and I remember that Sidney Poitier was in the house, but not on stage.
That's right.
Because probably too ill or didn't want to talk.
Yeah, right. You didn't want to put him in that position.
Yeah. But he's in the audience, and of course, you call him out, and he gets a standing ovation.
Yeah, a long standing ovation, yeah.
But what I remember is that I remember watching the film, and he was in the middle block, and I was in the sort of block next to him. And the movie's amazing, but at some point I need to go to the restroom, and I just leave, and as I turn, I just see this moment. Sometimes when there's a thing where it's like, I cannot take a photograph of this, so I'm just going to have to remember it. And I just turned, and I sort of couldn't help looking at Sidney Poitier's face, watching himself on screen. And Sidney Poitier bathed in the light of the sort of projector and his image on screen. And I'm just standing there like frozen in the aisle thinking like, must take mental picture. Can't take real picture. That would be terrible. But I have to remember this moment. And I stood there for about 30 seconds and thinking, I guess I better go to the restroom. But it's just seeing his face, looking at his face, was just thinking, wow.
Well, that's really nice to hear. It also suggests that he was, he was taken with that moment. Yeah.
He was sitting forward in his seat watching himself, and it was a moment.
All right. If you had to get a tattoo of a movie line, what would it be? And then I'm curious where you'd put it.
It's funny. My favorite line in the films, it's something where it's the punchline to something else. So I guess if you had it as a tattoo, it would be quite enigmatic. But my favorite line is in Raising Arizona. And it's when John Goodman and William Forsythe are robbing a store. And they're at the cashier. They're talking to the elderly cashier. And there's some novelty balloons next to the the register. And they say, balloons. He goes, oh, balloons. Do they blow up in funny shapes? And the old man says, no, unless round is funny. And then unless round is funny is probably my favorite line. And I was thinking, that's kind of a really weird quote to put on your body. But then you'd have to explain it to everybody. But I would be happy to do that. So I think it's like, unless round is funny from Raising Arizona.
If your tattoo causes you to have conversations about the Coen brothers.
Yes, exactly.
It's a useful tattoo. What movie would you show a date, somebody you were courting?
I can't say Raising Arizona, but that would probably be. I mean, there are those litmus test things, but I feel like that's kind of. It's probably bad to do that because you're preaching to the choir. If somebody, it would be a bad thing to say, I can't date this person because they hate this movie. But I guess if they really hated it, you would have to question that. I mean, weirdly enough, I used to have this thing when I was a teenager, and this is when I think it's something, this is very, I think, sort of immature in a way. I used to think that film was probably something like Goodfellas, that if they didn't like Goodfellas, I probably couldn't, be with that person. And that's kind of, I think, probably quite a naive and silly thing to think. Ironically, my fiance absolutely loves Goodfellas, and it's one of her favorite films.
I was going to say, there's no way, and I guarantee you she likes Raising Arizona, too. Or
She does. But actually, we got to see, just around the corner, we got to see Goodfellas together as a couple at the Aero like a couple of weeks ago because we had never seen it together. And it's both a film that we'd both seen multiple times, but we never actually seen it together. So I guess it could be Goodfellas.
I mean, in the two movies that I saw in the last 2 days of yours, rewatched Baby Driver and Shaun of the Dead, you have, neither of them are quite as intricate as Goodfellas, but you got long walking shots. You have things are moving, things are happening.
It's funny. I always get sort of people when they say that it's funny because I always get this thing of people say, oh, like, it's all about the quick cuts and stuff. But it's like, but the most famous shot in Shaun of the Dead is a 3-minute Steadicam shot.
Totally. Right. Yeah.
Which was the first day of the shoot, no less.
It's a great shot. I mean, the joke that is always the joke of how clueless these guys are, right? Or what they're missing, like what they're talking about and what they're missing. And what he misses is so great. Simon's ability to not see things is great. And that's a skill. It's another acting skill that probably never got taught, right? That he can miss the bloody handprint, that he misses the headline, that he misses everything.
He's an amazing physical performer, and he knows exactly how to, like being the deadpan center or something. It's just sort of a joy to watch that because it's a real trick to be the comedic center of a movie and sort of be the straighter person. It's kind of like the energy of like a Jack Lemmon or something like that. He's
definitely.
I think Simon has that. Just as two weird like things. The cinematographer of Shaun of the Dead, David Dunlap, with the camera operator on Goodfellas, and the second AC on Raising Arizona.
Oh, no, there you go. Look at that.
So there you go.
I bet you got good stories off him. Is there a movie villain you relate to or feel is misunderstood?
I struggle with this one because I feel like a lot of villain plots in the last 30 years have become the same plot. I think the villain plot in Moonraker, Hugo Drax, who wants to take sort of like this master race of supermodels into space and then kill everybody on Earth and start again with the beautiful people. You've now seen that plot in several other movies. It's in Kingsman, it's in The Avengers. Most of the plots now is about we have to reduce population on the Earth. To save the planet, and that means killing like half of the population. So I kind of thought I was struggling to find one. And then I thought, okay, so I wanted to go a different direction. And he's not really the villain, but he does become the villain. But I kind of thought that maybe Inspector Dreyfus, Herbert Lom in the Pink Panther films, is misunderstood because what's his beef? His beef is that like there's this idiot that's failing upwards and like ruining everything and keeps getting decorated for it. And it eventually drives him so mad that he becomes like a megalomaniac.
Yeah.
So I think maybe Inspector Dreyfus from the Pink Panther films, as played by Herbert Lom.
It's a great call. I love that call. That's good. And such a hard role for an actor to play, I think, right?
Oh, yeah. No, to be like, nobody's as funny as Peter Sellers, but to be very funny in a Peter Sellers film is no joke.
That's right. It's impressive. All right, for this, you're a thief is a vast warehouse where every movie prop is, every movie costume, everything having to do with a film is there. You can steal one thing. What do you take?
I'll give you a couple and you can pick.
All right.
The Ark of the Covenant from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Sure, literally in a warehouse.
In a warehouse. But it's got to be full of sand, like it is in the movie.
Right.
And it would just be the temptation. Imagine having that at a house party and the idea of taking it off is your face going to melt or not?
Sure, right, yeah. And you could just encourage certain people who are really irritating you to, no, just go ahead and open it. Yeah. I'm going to look away. Yeah.
The other things in that vein, one of them I sort of have a version of it, but it's not the original thing, is like the Necronomicon from Evil Dead. Greg Nicotero, the KMB impresario who worked on Evil Dead 2, gave me like a mold version. So I do have a Necronomicon, but so I guess I would have one. I guess the other one would be, great tactile prop, is the puzzle box from Hellraiser.
Oh, wow.
That would be a good one,
All
right?
Okay.
A great
All
one
right.
to have around on the coffee table is like, should I play with this? If I do I end up in this kind of S&M hell universe?
A lot of reaching for it and then hesitation if it's on the coffee table. Right.
Has anybody picked the Ark of the Covenant before?
No. And it's sort of it's the template for the question because immediately you when we say warehouse.
Yeah, my mind goes there straight away.
That's the warehouse, right? That's where I think of it every time I ask the question.
I say it's a tie then. It's between the Ark of the Covenant and the Hellraiser box.
You can steal two things. All right, your dad's favorite movie.
I think I actually called him today, like to check this with him. But he loves The Wages of Fear.
Oh, all right. That's a good one.
It's a really good. It's a cool one.
Yeah,
it's
a good one in that no one's ever answered that before for anything. Yeah.
My dad is the sort of person who his recall is fuzzy of things, and he would sometimes talk about the plots of movies, and then you'd have to tell him what the title was.
Yeah, but by the way, that's true of me. I have great trouble with titles.
Wages of Fear is one that I think he would talk about the premise. So I'd probably heard the premise of the movie and the title before I'd seen the movie. And it was something where he definitely told me the plot of the movie before I saw the movie. And then actually more recently, we showed him Sorcerer because he'd never seen the remake.
Oh, he never did?
No, and in the UK, because Sorcerer didn't do well in the States, in the UK, it was retitled The Wages of Fear.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah. In the UK, it was released as The Wages of Fear.
We screened it at the festival.
I was there.
Oh, you were there?
It was so loud. It was when William Friedkin introduced it.
Friedkin was there, yeah.
I saw it, and it was ear-splittingly, beautifully loud.
He was a great guest.
Oh, yeah.
Great
Amazing
guy to talk to.
I was there.
Okay, your mother's favorite film?
It's a Lawrence of Arabia, and I partly because my granddad was in World War II and was in the desert, and was kind of around at the time when
her father.
Her father, was around at the time when Lawrence was. So it was something that was I think a favorite film for his, although sort of probably something where, he had firsthand knowledge of some of that. But then she would always talk about seeing the movie, and she would always talk about the scene where Omar Sharif comes, with a mirage in the distance and comes towards camera. And she, I think, found Omar Sharif very handsome, but would always talk about that moment. And the other thing she would always talk about was the intermission and the fact that, cold drink sales went through the roof. everybody went and bought a cold drink in the intermission
Because they've been watching
They've just
a movie.
been in the desert.
Right. They've been
And
seeing
they're watching, kind of them take little sips.
Right. The thirst of the characters
Yes.
bleeds into the audience. So your mom, I mean, it's great. Which is what we read. So your mom's a conspiracy theorist? Is that-
She would hate that title. I mean, what I would say is that, like, it conjures up.
It's a diminishing title. Like, I mean,
Yes.
that it, because, first of all, sometimes they're conspiracies, but I mean, she is a.
I would know. She would be so mad if that's her. I think what I would say is when I was growing up, she was very open to theories about everything. So
Okay, yeah.
aliens, UFOs, everything, ghosts. She very much kind of.
Well, yeah, okay, that's different than a conspiracy theorist.
But
right?
I think in terms of anything that was any kind of like sort of tales of conspiracy or corruption or anything or cover-ups, she would be all over that stuff. And it kind of it inspired Hot Fuzz in a way, because it's almost like Hot Fuzz is like an extension of my mum's kind of like sort of wildest conspiracies about what's really going on in the town.
All right, that is different. So I immediately regret to
No,
your
she's
mother.
not wearing a tinfoil hat.
Your mom is the Leslie.
Yeah.
All right, Leslie, I'm sorry. All right, so here's your wild card question. No, sorry. What movie makes you cry without fail?
I mean, I'd say as a kid, like E.T. in terms of, actually not the bits that you would expect. I kind of get like teary about like surging scores.
Well, sure, they want you to.
But not in a necessarily like, it's actually sort of something, I actually think the sort of like the John Williams score surging right before they take off, like that moment of like terror and the sort of, and then the flight, it would be something like that. Kind of sometimes euphoric tears.
Right, like you're moved by those scores.
I'm moved by how kind of like dramatic it is. So they're definitely that as a kid. A more recent one that I kind of like really got me was Umberto D. Which I only saw more recently, and the end of that film is like that would kind of break the hardest heart. Like he might commit suicide, but his dog's gonna stop him.
I don't know. I haven't seen that film.
Well, I'm telling you now, you will cry.
Oh no, I guarantee you I'll cry. I mean, if a dog is involved in saving their owner or a dog's love for their owners, and it doesn't matter how bad the movie is.
It's a great one, and it's a great one. So those would be my two answers: Umberto D and E.T.
Last question. This is your wild card question. So in the movie of your life, the Edgar Wright story, living or dead, you have a lot of filmmaking friends, a lot of filmmakers you admire. Your story, who directs it?
Living or dead?
Yeah, I mean, just saying, you could pick John Ford to direct it. I'm saying you can't because he's dead. But so maybe I'll leave out the dead part. Just who directs your story?
Oh my God. Let's say I'd like to see like the Chuck Jones version of my life. Could it be anime? Could Chuck Jones do it?
Of course.
Okay,
yeah,
that's
of
my
course.
answer.
That's a very, by the way, incredibly safe answer. So, right, that's that way Guillermo del Toro doesn't say, "I can't believe you chose Quentin Tarantino." Edgar, thanks. This was great. Thanks for coming to my thanks for coming to my Citizen Cave.
The Citizen Cave.
Yeah.
It caught on so quickly.
It did. So you made it. That's and that's a nice button to put on it. I can't believe you came up with that so quickly. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
After we wrapped with Edgar, we realized that I forgot to ask him one of our Super 8 questions. Sorry. We know what movie made him cry. We did not get what movie always makes him laugh. So we got in contact with Edgar, and he sent us his response. I have not heard it. I'm going to play it now on my mobile phone. I will hear it along with you. Here once again, Edgar Wright.
Hi, it's Edgar. The missing question, what film makes me laugh without fail? I can think of a ton of them off the top of my head. Some of them would be Airplane, Top Secret, The Naked Gun.
3 for 3.
But also Sleeper, Bananas,
2 Woody
Play
Allen.
Against Sam, Annie Hall. But
7
also
for
Young
7.
Frankenstein,
8 for
Blazing
8.
Saddles.
9 for 9.
So that's already too many. So why don't I go a completely different direction? And because he very sadly passed away recently,
Let's give it up for Rob Reiner's debut movie, This Is Spinal Tap, which is endlessly quotable and laugh out loud funny several times every minute. It's not a laugh a minute, it's like 10 laughs a minute. It's incredible, that movie. So why don't we say This Is Spinal Tap?
Well, there you have it. Edgar Wright has picked This Is Spinal Tap. He named 9 movies prior to that. So, ironically, This Is Spinal Tap was the 10th movie he made, but we all know that Spinal Tap goes to 11. That's our show. You can find many of the movies we talked about on HBO Max, and we made a list for you. It's in our show notes. You can watch this podcast on HBO Max and YouTube, as well as listen to it wherever it is you listen to podcasts. James Kim is the showrunner of Talking Pictures. The managing editor is Darby Maloney. Video editor is Andrew David Lewis. Tori Stegman is our talent producer. Additional talent booking by Noea Murphy. Glenn Matullo mixes every episode. Production support from Phil Richards. Director of photography is Fred Munoz. Camera operator Kristen Torres. Set design by Raphael Laurier and Leanne Reagan-Barnes. Angela Carone is our director of podcasts at TCM. Team at HBO Max Podcasts, that's executive producer Michael Gluckstad, senior producer Allison Cohen-Sirokach, and producer Kenya Reyes. The HBO Max Concept and Design Studio, Marta Duarte-Diaz, Karen Guan, and Kendall Thomas. Production support from Jaco Friedman, Liz Winter, John Renault, and Kristen Hassel, and special thanks to Julie Baton. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. I'm Ben Mankiewicz. See you next time.